Good evening, Endeavour. I'm filming this on Monday night and I'm hoping it's going to get to you ready for tomorrow. It's a bit tricky with Mr. Toppin and I being at school at the minute, but we'll give it a try. Now we're on chapter 15. We left it last week where Prometheus had a visit, didn't he, from Zeus, and lovely Jim has offered to give him a hand of finding his hero. Let's see what's going to happen. Chapter 15, Mucklethrift Manor, the drawing room. Go on, guess was at the door. Want a clue? All right, it was either Mr. Mucklethrift or his butler or Sergeant Sargent or January Storm. But which one? Remember, just as Zeus disappeared, the drawing room door was opened. The door creaked open and a face peered around the door. It was a fat face with dandelion clock of hair. When he saw Theus and I were alone, he stepped into the room, carrying a small box that had been in the coffin. "Has Mr. Mucklethrift gone?" he asked. "Yes, Uncle Edward," I said. "Well, did you guess right? You thought my clue was misleading? All I can say is you're a very bad loser." "The guests are gathering," he said. "I've set up the magic lantern in the screen." "You use magic?" Theus asked. "Not really, my boy. It's called a magic lantern, but it's just a real simple oil lamp. It shines through a picture and the picture appears on the wall behind us," Uncle Edward explained. "It sets the scene and it thrills our audience." Theus nodded. "I see." "Did you have an interesting chat with your cousin?" Uncle Edward asked. "Yes," Theus said with a sigh. "He told me that there is so much misery in the world." "Huh?" Uncle Edward blinked. I didn't want Uncle Edward knowing the story of Theus. He would only trick the Titan into using his godly powers to make us rich. "You need your makeup on, Uncle Edward," I said quickly. "Ah, so true, young Jim, so true." He turned to Theus. "Your cousin won't mind if we use his library as our dressing room, will he?" No," Theus said with a shrug. Uncle Edward sat in the chair and wrapped a handkerchief round his neck, and then he opened a makeup box and began to cover his face with grease paint and powder. As he did so, he explained to Theus, "I need to make myself look ghastly, like a fat old man." "But you are a ghastly fat old man," Theus said. "Ha ha, very funny, my boy. When Jim and I do a comedy show, we will use your talent for joking," he promised. He looked in the small mirror on the inside of the box and gave a great shudder. "Ooh, sometimes I even scare myself." He turned to us. "Now, Jim, you know what to do?" "Yes, Uncle Edward," I said wearily. "I act in the drama of the Uncle—" "That's right. And then it's finished. Theus here will carry the coffin out of the drawing room and Jim will stay in the hall with the coffin." "Why?" Theus asked. "Why can't I do that?" Jim likes to look after the coffin, don't you, Jim?" And he gave me a wink which said, "When I say look after, I mean fill it with all the stuff you're going to rob from the house." "Yes, Uncle," I said, "it's my job. Meanwhile, I will recite the poem about the burial of Sir John Moore on the Coroner." And Uncle Edward warmed up his voice by practising the pitiful poem. "Slowly and sadly we laid him down from the field of his fame, fresh and gory. We carved not a line and we raised not a stone, but we left him alone with his glory." "Fresh and gory?" Theus shuddered. "Don't you know any happy poems?" No, my boy. The customers like a bit of horror, a little bit of terror, some suffering." Theus shook his handsome head. "They seem to have plenty of that in Eden City," he said. "Ah, but you've only seen the poor suffering masses in the streets and the gutters, young man. Tonight you will see how the rich live. Tonight you will see the handsome people of this city, the happy people of this city. And they like a little miserable poetry to remind them how happy they are. See?" "No," Theus said. He was about to argue when there was a knock at the door again and it opened. The butler stood there with winter in his face. "I have two gentlemen to see you," he said, and threw the door open wider. I froze colder than the butler's nose. I knew who the two men were from the pictures on the walls of the hall. The large man was George Mucklethrift, owner of Mucklethrift Manor, and the weedy one was Mayor Walter Tweed. We were finished. We would be discovered. At least we didn't have the coffin full of Mucklethrift loot, yet. Maybe they would throw us out for lying. Maybe they would hang us. Maybe my throat felt tight. "Oh!" Mr. Mucklethrift stepped into the room. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Mucklethrift Manor. I'm pleased to have you here. We have one or two ladies who sing to the piano, but—" He leaned forward and prodded Uncle Edward in the waistcoat and lowered his voice. "They sound more like strangled cats. Do you know what I mean?" The word strangled gave me an ache in my throat again. When Mr. Mucklethrift laughed, he threw back his head and showed the forest of hairs up his nose, just as he had when Zeus had copied his body. Uncle Edward laughed happily. Indeed, my friend, we will offer your guests something quite different. Drama and thrills, a night they will never forget. And a night Mr. Mucklethrift would never forget, when he found out his house had been robbed of all its valuables. Mucklethrift laughed with Uncle Edward and said, "Will you be ready to start in 10 minutes? Our pleasure and our honour," Uncle Edward replied with a small bow. "And it must be a special thrill for you to meet your old school friend," Mucklethrift added. "Must it?" "Well, yes, he gave you a note yesterday," Mucklethrift said. "My butler told me." "He did?" "Of course he did, that's why you're here." "It is?" "It is. I wouldn't let just any old stranger in my house." Mr. Mucklethrift turned and wrapped an arm around the shoulder of the weedy man. "Here is Mayor Tweed, your old friend, Edward Slaughter. You said you wanted to see him?" The weedy mayor looked at Uncle Edward with eyes like a rattlesnake's. "I want to see Mr. Edward Slaughter, I most certainly do. We have one or two very interesting things to say to each other." I closed my eyes and felt faint. Mr. Mucklethrift chuckled. "I will leave you two old chums together. Don't keep him too long. The show starts in 5 minutes. "What I have to say won't take long," the mayor said with menace. Mr. Mucklethrift closed the door and closed us in. This was one pot of hot water Uncle Edward would not be talking his way out of. Still he smiled bravely. "Come in, my old friend. Come in, Willie." "It's Wally," I groaned. "His name is Wally." "Oh, well," said Uncle Edward with a smile. "Oh, hell," I sighed. Look out for part 2. I'm going to film this tonight too. Take care, Endeavour. See you soon.